I want to start with one of my favorite stories I learned as a very small boy from another great storyteller, perhaps one of the best known of all. I'm sure some of you might have heard of him. He was my great-great-grandfather, Aesop. Well, anyway, one of my favorite stories by my great-great-grandfather, Aesop, was the story of a lion. And a lion, when he was a cub one day, as cubs want to do, was practicing his hunting skills. And what did he catch but a great fierce mouse? And the lion and the mouse, whose tail was under the lion's paw, begged and pleaded in his squeaky little mouse voice, "Oh, please, please, great lion, spare me my life today, and someday I shall return you this favor." The lion cub laughed, because he knew he would grow up to be a great strong lion, and the mouse would always be just a tiny little mouse. But the audacity of the mouse amused the lion, so he let him go and forgot about the incident. Well, time passes for lions as it does for people, and he did become a great strong lion. And one day, while he was out hunting, he saw something. He saw a shank of a lamb hanging from a tree. And the lion came up to it to grab at it, and the ground beneath him gave way, and he found himself in a trap with a net going over him. Well, men came, and they pulled the tent out, and they pulled the net out, and they pulled the lion out, and they hung him up. And the lion roared, and he clawed at the net, but he could not tear his way through. And his heart sank as if it were made out of lead. And tears poured down his once proud cheeks, for he knew what this meant. He had heard these stories before of the men who captured lions and sell them, and they are taken away and never seen again. And he realized this was to be his fate. He would no longer run free. He would no longer hunt. He would no longer be the lion. He would only be an amusement. Well, the night wore on, and the lion eventually went to sleep. And he heard something. "Lion, lion." He opened an eye. He opened one of his great amber eyes and looked, and there was a small mouse. He said, "Who are you?" He said, "Do you remember many years ago when you spared a small mouse?" "What's that got to do with you?" "That mouse was my grandfather. And now he told us that story. And I have come to release you." "Thank you, little mouse," said the lion. "But what can one little mouse do?" "I will show you what one little mouse can do," said the mouse. And he ran off. And the lion looked, and as if the ground itself had come alive, there was a swarm of mice, a huge swarm of mice. The lion had never seen so many mice in his life. No one had. And the lion said, "Who are these?" "These are my brothers, my sisters, my cousins, my uncles, my aunts, my friends. They had all heard the story of the great act you did." And the mice jumped up on the net, and with their sharp little teeth, they began to chew at the net and chew at it until the net became so weak it burst, and the lion fell. And he got up on his feet, and he ran off. No matter how small and insignificant one tiny person, one thing may seem, it could lead on to greatness. And that is the importance of a story. We all have stories. Every day of our life is a story. Every moment of our life is a story. How we wish to write it, what we wish to write it, well, that is up to us. The universe is a great canvas. And it is or a great page, or a great block of stone. What you make from it is what you wish. The story of the sculptor, has anyone ever heard it? There was once a great sculptor who made those beautiful statues of horses out of every block of stone he saw. People looked at them and they swore these horses, no matter if they were this big or a life size, could come to life. That's how real they looked. And they asked the master, "How is it you can do this?" He said, "It's no big deal. It's not a secret. I look at the stone, and I simply remove everything that is not a horse." What is your life? What is the story you wish to leave? The story is the only true example we have of an afterlife. Think of the stories that your parents told you of their parents, your grandparents. Do you not think that their parents told them stories, or the stories that you make for your children and grandchildren? I had a friend many years ago who one day his 7-year-old son got into trouble, as a 7-year-old will, and he said the eternal words of every parent, and I'm sure you all know them. Why don't you ever listen to me? How many of us have heard that at one point or another? Raise your hands. Okay. Why don't you ever listen to me? Well, he learned something very important that day. You know what it was? Do not say that when your father is in the room, because his father, the boy's grandfather, looked up and said, why should he? You never listened to me when you were his age. So remember what you leave. And do not think that the smallest things you do will be forgotten. As I am a fan of the tales of Nazareth Dean. One day, Nazareth Dean went to the mosque for services. And as he was kneeling in prayer, a bodily function occurred. And he perfumed the air with his own addition. Nazareth Dean was very embarrassed. So he left town and he moved away. Well, after a number of years had passed, and Nazareth Dean was certain that this little incident would be forgotten. What happens? He decides to go back to his hometown. And there's his old house. And as he's going up to it, he sees a young boy playing there. And he says, oh, hello there, young fellow. He says, hello, sir, how are you? He says, well, I'm well. He says, the little boy looks at him and says, are you going into this house? He says, well, yes, I am. He says, oh, well, this house has been abandoned for many years. And he says, really? Why? He says, well, this house and I are very close, and I have to tell you why. And he said, what is it? You see, I was born the day that Nazareth Dean passed wind in the mosque. So you see, things will not be forgotten. Especially nowadays when we have much better recording devices, and that's nothing. Think of the story. What was the original way of recording a story? You remembered it. And the one thing about the art of the storyteller, it's just better than the art of the deal, let me tell you. One thing about the art of the storyteller is that a story is flexible. As you can add to it, take away from it, polish this, ignore that. But that will be done by another storyteller and another story. So, you know the name of the game as telephone, but in my grandmother's time, they knew it as pass along. Zadayach, to give. That is the word the game was called, Zadayach, to give. And each person you would say something and you would pass it around the circle. And always, what the last person said was never what the first person said. Now, moving on from there, we then learned the terrible skill of writing. Because with the terrible skill of writing, you can now record the story as it was, or add to it, or subtract from it, as a storyteller will. But now you have different versions, as you have different versions of verbal. But now they are more permanent, because if only one person knew the story, when that person dies, the story dies with them. But if they write it down, even if that person dies today, that story will last long after them until the pages are found and burned. And as I am fond of saying, I am Youssef the Storyteller. I know many things, and for a reasonable fee, I will keep silent. But moving along, what are stories? Stories are incredible treasures. Do you know that all stories have to have conflict? What's a story without conflict? It's not a story. And what are the great conflicts? Well, there's man versus man versus himself, man versus nature, and man versus the unknown. In every great story, those elements are found because the hero goes out to face the dangers. Is he sure he will succeed? No. So he is facing himself. He is facing his own fears. Does anybody know what the word myth actually means? Yes.
something that's not necessarily true, but it can.
That is the popular definition of the word myth. But does anybody know the true meaning of the word myth? Well, then I will tell you. The word comes from the Greek language, and it is mythos. And mythos does not just mean a story. That's not a story. It has deeper meaning. Mythos means something closer to tradition, something that is passed along, something that is handed down, something that is a connective tissue. The mythos that was heard 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, is the same mythos that you would hear today. And your parents heard it, your grandparents heard it, your great-grandparents heard it, your great-great-grandparents heard it, and their so on and so on and so on and so on. And the stories of the mythos involved usually the gods or the heroes of that culture. And every person who heard these stories could connect to that hero because they were a part of their clan. Human beings are tribal, clanal, pack animals. There's no denying this. We survived as a species by this because as we developed, we lost our fangs, we lost our claws. Well, some of us did. Anyway, we lost our tails, but but as you can see, I've got a tail of my own. Anyway, but how did we survive? We survived by forming units. Our remotest ancestors survived by forming units. And what were the earliest stories probably like? Tales of survival. How to find food, how to find shelter, how to hunt, how to forage, what to eat, what not to eat. Oh, bad thing happened today. What? I'll find funny fruit. Look very good. I'll bite. He fall down, start rolling around and die. Don't eat that fruit. Not good for Og, not good for you. Is that not a story? But does that not teach the people of that tribe, of that little family unit, what not to do to survive? Or Og's funeral, or another one, Thog's funeral. Thog was great hunter, tribe will miss Thog. Great hunter does not get that close to Mammoth till he's sure he's dead. This is what a story is all about. This is what a story means. When you tell your stories, I mean, how many times have we heard, what kind of day did you have, Dee? Fine. That's it. One word, fine. Yeah, that was okay. Or if something happens, oh boy, did the boss ring me out today. Let me tell you what happened when I walked in the door. That simple line, what kind of day did you have? That's an invitation to a story. How many of us sit down and watch the news? Why? So we can hear the news stories. We wish to be informed. Stories inform, they entertain, they ennoble. They teach us what to do and they teach us what not to do. Going back to the idea of the myth, show me a religion that does not have a myth connected with it. You can't. It doesn't exist. All religions are based upon myth in the sense of the tradition, of the story, of the meaning. And the myth is to teach the values, the importance. Whether the myth is that of an actual person or a fabricated one, doesn't matter as long as it conveys the story. We still love, I mean, look at, today we call storytellers novelists in the highest sense, or politicians in the lowest. But, what, you don't think a politician's, I mean, what's the difference between a con man and a politician? A $300 suit. But, going on, what can I say about the telling of a story? What can I say about the art of the story? We have our heroes. They are national, they are public, they're private. And what keeps them alive? The stories we tell about them, the stories we remember about them. Do you know that we all love the stories of somebody's dirty underwear? You know what I'm talking about. We love to see when our heroes screw up, We love to see when they fail or they don't quite live up to the standards. Do you want to know why? It's not, they're not so great. No, it's a reminder of something much deeper. It's a reminder that they are as human as we are. And this humanity is what binds us to them. Of course, they're going to make mistakes. Life doesn't really come with an instruction manual, in case most of you haven't heard, or heard to the contrary. No, it doesn't. There's no one book that has all the answers. I haven't written it yet. There's no one book that has all the answers. At best, a book can do is be a guideline, give you an idea. You hear somebody, oh, this book will change your life. That I have 2 words to say. Take it from there. That is the sound of a male bovine creating fecal matter. Yes, exactly. You know why I say that's what it is? Because the only person who can change your life is the person you see in a mirror in the morning. The book may give you instructions. The book may teach you a few things, but ultimately, the story that you are writing, you can stop writing it, you can edit it, because you can change the story. You are the author of your own life. Yes, your parents may have brought you into this world. They may have given you life. They may teach you as best they can. Your parents are going to make mistakes. I know mine did. Look, that's why I'm here today. But, and that's why I have the attitudes I have today. Remember, your kids will remember your mistakes. They're going to be living examples of your mistakes. But you can always change the story of your life. You can always rewrite it. Yes, 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 I know. We are the masters of everything we are going to say and do, and the slaves to everything we have said and done. And that's the same for everybody. That's the same for the lowest beggar to the highest king. Nobody is free from that chain. Nobody is free from that experience. Nobody is free from that you want to call it karma? Do you want to call it fate? Whatever. How many remember the old Joan Baez song, There But Fortune Go I? In that song, she says, show me the beggar, show me the drunkard, and there but for fortune go I. By fortune, she means fate, or if you are more theistically inclined, God or whatever, there but for God go I. It is the idea that if you look at any person, no matter how well their lives are going, no matter how poorly their lives are going, because they are another human being, you could see yourself in that person's eyes. You could see yourself in that person's life. Somewhat amusing story. Is everybody here over 21 or over 18? All right, you can stay. Harry runs up to his friend Mike. Mike, I got terrible news. What happened? Well, John came home from work early yesterday and he caught Tom in bed with his wife. Okay, could have been worse. No, you don't understand. You know how insanely jealous he was? He took his gun and he shot them and then he shot himself. It could have been worse. I just tell you, a friend of ours commits murder and suicide and you say it could be worse. How could it be worse? Well, if he came home from work an hour early yesterday, he would have caught me there. Yes, and you heard it here today, folks. Now think of the stories you're going to be telling about this sermon. You have assured my immortality and my immorality while we're at it. You want to laugh? What you're not laughing for? Go ahead, laugh. I don't mind. I want you to laugh. I want you to respond. That is real. If a story does not make you laugh, it does not make you cry, it does not make you think, why the hell are you listening to it? If you do not like the way the story of your life is going, you got 2 choices. You could stay where you could continue that way and say, to hell with it, change is too hard. Or you could change it and do something else. There's an old Russian proverb, which I will say in English. The more you watch where I am riding, the less you see where you are going. That is something many of us find very hard to learn because we are so worried about the other person, the outside. Well, what about this person? The story of the lion and the mouse said, a tiny little mouse saved the great lion. The great martial artist, teacher, writer, actor, Bruce Lee. I'm sure some of us here remember him. Grew up watching his movies. You know, the excitement of him when he'd take on the enemy. He was also a philosopher. And using his martial training, he wrote a number of books. And actually, some of the titles were given by later his students, like Striking Thoughts, which is one of my favorites. It's a collection of little couples of sayings, of expressions. One of his favorite teachings that he would tell his students was this. If you are fighting a man who is determined to rip your ears off, you may beat that man into a bloody pulp. But I will tell you this, if he is so determined, when you go away from that fight, you're going to be missing a pair of ears. What he meant by that was a person who is truly determined to achieve their goal. Even if they fail, that is another important thing that stories tell us. Why does the hero go out? Because I will tell you, he knows he may fail. That is inherent in the story. We know we may fail. But you know what the opposite side is? If you do not go out, if you do not face this, you have failed. That is one of the most important teachings of the great classic myths. If they did not do this, they could have failed. If they go out and do it, if they go out to battle, if they go out to... When Beowulf faced Grendel, did he know he was going to survive? No. When he faced that great monster that was killing the people of the meat of the town, did he know? No. And when he killed Grendel, everybody thought, yay, hooray, Beowulf, you're really great. Well, then Beowulf had to face another really, a better ass than Grendel, and that was Grendel's mom. And that's when the party really got interesting. This is what I'm saying. The art of the story is to inspire, to frighten, to teach. We talk about fairy tales. Oh, that's just a fairy tale. That's just a myth. But if you think about these stories, they were ways of dealing with the concept of an unseen world. Well, you know, every one of us has a concept of an unseen world. And it doesn't have to be supernatural. Do you know why? Can anybody tell me with 100% certainty what's going to happen tomorrow? There's your unseen world now, isn't it? Do you ever think of it that way? Can anybody, or better yet, can anybody tell me what's going to happen to them an hour from now? There's your unseen world. We all move through this world every second of every day. A young Christian once asked me, and I really love arguing with the young Christians. You know why? Because while they are inflamed with the passion of their Bible and of their beliefs, they're meeting up with a crotchety, grouchy old curmudgeon who's a secularist who's been through more fecal matter in his life than they've probably even imagined in their young life. Remember this. There's one advantage to growing older. You want to know what that is? Age, skill, and treachery beat out youth and enthusiasm every time. He said, don't you have any faith? I said, well, I've got faith in a lot of things. I have faith I have a home to come to at the end of the day. I have a faith that I will arrive safely at my destination. I have faith that I will see tomorrow. But do I have any proof of it? No. You have faith in a world that somebody told you about. There's the old story of the young monk who goes up to an older one. He says, "Brother, I am troubled." "What troubles you?" He says, "I have been reading the scriptures. I've been reading what the philosophers have said, and I am wondering, is what they say is true? Is there truly a heaven and a hell?" The old monk just shrugged his shoulders and said, "I was taught the same things, and I can only say I assume there is. I don't know." And the young monk looked at him and said, "But you have been a monk for 50 years. You have served the Lord. You have read the Bible. How can you say this?" The old monk looked at him and said, "Because I'm still on this side of the ground." That is what I'm saying. What is the art of the story? When your kids ask you to tell them the stories of what it was like to grow up back in your day before the iPhone, before that. Did you know that one of my cousins, this was back when this invention, which, how many still have a VCR? Okay, so you still have VHS tapes and all that, right? Do you remember when they first came out? You could record your favorite shows. You could record, sporting events. You could record anything, and you could watch it later at your leisure. Well, I remember speaking to one of my younger cousins, and I told him, before we had these, if you missed your favorite show, if you missed that game, that was it. You had to find out from somebody what happened. And they looked at me like I was one step. I might as well have been telling them, I remember what it was like to paint on the cave walls. Well, actually, I do, but that's another story. Yes, I have painted on cave walls, but don't do it in the national park. They don't like it. Share your stories. My grandmother told me stories. Some were fanciful, some were very human. She told me the stories of watching her own mother die of what might have been cholera, because she said she had a high fever and she couldn't eat or drink and she just wasted away. My grandmother was 13 years old when her mother died, and when she had several younger siblings. When they put her mother into the ground that day, she knew what that meant. She became the mamalushka, which means the little mother. She now had to take on the duties of raising her brothers and sisters, of cooking the meals, of sewing the clothes. She had to learn all of this. The stories she told me of our homeland, our ancestral homeland, today, when I think about them, I have to remind myself by looking at pictures of what Poland is like today, that the stories she told me are stories of a land 100 years ago. That land is as dead as its people today. The people in Poland are dead, right? Well, if they keep going their political rate, no, that's not sorry. But the people who were my family, who were their friends, who they left behind to come here, they're gone and dead. That Poland is gone and dead. It only lives in stories. Those people only live now in stories. And as long as somebody remembers your story, are you really gone? No. You want immortality? Live an immortal life. Out of the billions of people who have ever lived on this planet, what, a few thousand, a few 100,000 have achieved immortality? Why? Because we can read their stories. Why do you think people love history so much? Okay. Yes, I know. And I want to thank you all. And if you wish to continue hearing these stories, thank you. I think I made my point, and thank you very much for your indulgence.